Hey guys, what's going on? Welcome to another video. Hope you guys are doing well today. So in this video, I want to talk to you about the troubles of trying to level a tank at the moment. This is my new character. When I say new, he's been sat around for a little while gathering some LP, got a solid 1.4k LP. Kind of showed him off in the last video. And yeah, at that point he wasn't able to wear anything T4. I've spent about an hour on him today, got him to be able to wear T4 in everything that I want. Got him some nice T4.2 gear, leveling up the specs I want other than the weapons. And we'll talk about that more in a second. But I kind of want to talk about tanks and being able to level tanks and healers to a point, but tanks specifically, right? So I did a fame farm yesterday in Corpse Spation, which is the tier 5 Druid Keeper dungeon. It wasn't difficult, and we went without a tank. Now, this just shows me how irrelevant tanks are in Fame Farm, in other guilds where I've tried to get involved in at different times. They've literally not brought tanks at all. Tanks are very, very often seen as crucial to a group when it comes to Fame, and it really is a bad sort of situation. And when I actually spoke to Sandbox about this, the answer was, well, why don't you just use something else? So at the moment, let's talk about the meta for tanks. The meta for tank is Guardian armor with the potential for the new plate armor, the artifact one, the Judicator armor to be meta. But at the moment, Guardian armor is just where it's at for tanks, and that is literally the hardest armor in the game to level solo because, well, it's literally doesn't give you any combat stats other than health. Which, great, okay, so I've decided to go down the route of going for the artifact one. Why? Because it gives me an extra 5% damage, and while that seems silly, if I'm going to grind my way to T6 or T7, maybe even T8, I want to do it 5% faster because 5% of that amount of time is quite a long length of time. I spoke to Sandbox about this, and like I said, the answer was, well, why don't you just use something else? Why don't I just use soldier armor instead? Why don't I just use forge hammers instead of great hammer, which is actually what I want to level? Why don't I use double bladed instead of staff of balance or whatever? And my response to this was, well, what about the specs? What about the specs that make this game so crucial, make this game so powerful? And make people so powerful. It's literally the point of grinding is to get specs. Without specs, you get a significant disadvantage against anyone you're going to be fighting who has specs. Now, tanks are something that obviously people have managed to level, and we're going to go over a couple of ways that you can actually level your tanks. Firstly, obviously, a big way to do it is through dungeons. You have to find a nice guild that actually wants tanks in their groups, which isn't always the easiest thing in the world to do. You have to typically wear certain things. I mean, druid sandals, part of my build, and they're great for fame farming. That's a win for me. Artifact armors, look at the 3 artifact armors. Demon armor, absolutely trash when it comes to fame farming. Graveguard armor, literally useless in fame farms, it doesn't offer any benefit. And Judicator armor, which is just too expensive for me to even consider bringing to fame farms. So again, I have to nerf myself on my chest piece to get any sort of spec into what I actually want to level. Guardian armor does offer something, but again, if I wanted to level artifact armor, I have that issue. You then have doing solo stuff. So as you can see, I'm doing Roman mobs now. Kind of wanted to test how hard it would be. And actually, to my surprise, it wasn't all too difficult. I am only T4 Reaver. Like I said, this is a very new character. I tried doing it with a Great Hammer. And honestly, my E was literally pointless. It didn't offer me anything, really. And my Qs just hit for absolutely nothing with plate armor on. So the only things I really had going for me with a Great Hammer was the W. Whereas with the Forge Hammers, I have an E that actually does some damage, I have a W that does a huge amount of damage, and I have Qs that are, again, pointless. I'm also running the Stalker Hood, which does substantially speed things up. And that's fine, that's an option I have available to me. I actually tested this. I did an hour on another character running full 4.2. I actually played Curse. Tried to see what sort of fame I could get. I was actually able to get around 130k, 140k an hour fame, which is still really good fame considering. My tank at the moment has been significantly less fame. Up around maybe the sort of 70 to 80k fame per hour, and their T4 zones, T5 zones, which again have a significantly higher amount of traffic through them. I've already been ganked once, managed to get away, but still that was 5 minutes that I spent having to run away, whereas in the T7 zones that I'm used to farming in, haven't had any issues at all, no gangs, and when I have, I've just walked away, pretty much. Again, that's another option. You then have hardcore expeditions, which hardcore expeditions encourage basically anything past a +5 encourages you to run something completely built for hardcore expeditions and not built for anything else. So look at Lupak's tank build that he was running with the pole hammer. One pole hammer, completely out of the meta in terms of GVGs. Maybe it's usable, but I definitely wouldn't say it's a top tier weapon. Of which you're going to want to level if that's the sort of life that you're going for. You then have the Guardian helmet or the Soldier helmet, both of which were okay, but neither of them are particularly viable in the GVG scenario when you have things like you have things like the Hellion Hood, the Demon helmet, which are both incredibly strong. So again, have them that just aren't too viable. I also believe he was running the Hunter shoes, if I'm not mistaken, which again wasn't something. It's something that maybe can be used, but is certainly not top tier or particularly viable. And again, we go back to the same situation. You can nerf yourself down and not level the things you directly want to level, but you can do it. And this is kind of what I'm going towards at the moment. And I actually spoke to someone about this today. I spoke to a tank about it today who GVGs literally every day on his tank because he just cannot find high tier tanks at the moment. Typically, all of them are in guilds. Guilds being such a mandatory part of leveling tanks, it's not surprising that a lot of them are obviously sustaining in their guilds, sustaining that environment. We then have the fact that he was like, he was leveling an alt tank just so he can get more GVGs per day. And I was like, my hat goes off to you, and how are you going to do it? And I went, well, in fairness, I get GVGs so much on my main tank that the gear I've built up around 70 mil worth of tomes at this point. So I'm just going to tome him up to like T7 and a half, nearly T8 with a bit of LP, and then I'll probably do the rest in Hellgates. And that leads me to an interesting point of Hellgates. Hellgates, you can typically bring obviously your normal gear, but they are the only, like, they're probably the best source of fame, honestly, for a tank that actually wants to level everything correctly at the same time. You want to run Stalker Helmet, you can probably get away with it. You want to run Heli, and it's a little bit more expensive, but you can do it. You want to run Druid Sandals, you want to run your Judicator Armors, your Guardian Armors, whatever, and you can probably get away with all of it. However, it means that tanks then become the only role in the game that is forced into a scenario where they have to PvP to get the best fame. Healers can solo Blighted Bog, solo Circling Vulture elites or veterans and get 2.5k, 3k per mob. A T4, so a new player, could literally go to a T7 area with poison pots or a T6 area with poison pots, kill the roaming mobs, get double the fame that I'm getting at the moment, and kill them at the same rate. Why? Because healers have an incredibly strong W. They also use cloth, which means they also have a way of scaling the damage really high. And I think this is something that has to be addressed by Sandbox, because honestly, it's at a point now that people just don't want to level tanks. And the people that are leveling tanks are getting burnt out with it, and I'm seeing so many more people that are like, yeah, I can tank for you, but I'm like T6, and I'm probably not going to do any further. I was speaking to someone else again the other day that went, yeah, my tank is literally 90% famed up from Hellgates. He just literally just didn't fame farm, didn't do anything else, because he just didn't want to do it. He wasn't able to get in them groups or sustain them groups, so he just did Hellgates with worse gear and slowly made his way through. But comparing to a DPS, comparing to my curse that's hit 280k fame an hour, in T7, comparing to my bow who hit 250k, compared to my axe that almost broke the 300k mark, tanks really kind of get shafted. And I think that's a fair comment. So guys, I'm not going to rant anymore. This is a very, very ranty video, and for that I do apologise. But I'm interested to see what your guys' opinions on this are. Am I just sort of reacting to the situation, or did tanks really get shafted in this game and has Sandbox just done nothing about it? I hope you guys have enjoyed the video. Let me know your comments. I really do want to hear them. So thank you for listening, and catch you later, guys.